Well, greetings everyone, and welcome once again to another session of the Sports Crib. We're here every Wednesday evening to talk a little sports. Let's get our commercials out of the way. As you can see, I'm known as West Coast Steeler fan on social media. You can hit me there on Facebook as well as Instagram and Twitter. Our Cash App is, as you see, $ JE King 3. And that's also our Facebook pages where you can get a directory to all of our content. Okay, all of the commercials are out of the way. Let's introduce our guest for this evening. David, I'm gonna hope I'm not gonna butcher up his name, Orchenko.
Or Chenna, but you can just
Or
call me David O. That's
David O. How are you doing tonight, David?
doing okay.
Is that a terrible towel I see there over your right shoulder?
Yes, it is indeed.
Okay, I have a few of those myself. Dave, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I've been a Steelers fan since 1972. I consider myself an average Steelers fan. A little bit knowledgeable, but not overly knowledgeable. I'm a contributor to Steelers Depot, which is run by Dave Bryan, and then he has his terrible podcast 3 times a week. But the Steelers Depot does a lot of draft profiles, probably 20 or 30 articles a day on the website. And I'm just like one of many contributors to the site.
Now, I found you on Clubhouse. You want to tell us a little bit about that particular aspect?
Sure. Yeah. So, of course, Clubhouse got started during the pandemic. And so I started the Steelers Town Hall on Clubhouse. So every Monday night at 8:30 East Coast time, we were open to any Steelers fan. And actually, we get fans from some other teams. And we primarily talk about the Steelers or the AFC North or the NFL in general.
Now, are you from Pittsburgh, Dave?
Originally, I'm from Pittsburgh, but I've lived in Maryland. Our family moved down here in the mid-1960s, but we always maintained our links to Western Pennsylvania.
Now, it's a little ironic. I'm from Youngstown, Ohio, so I'm sure you're familiar with Youngstown.
Oh, yeah. I had a lot of relatives from Youngstown.
Yeah, we're almost equidistant between the Browns and the Steelers. It just so happens in my family, I'm the only Steeler fan. Everyone else is a Browns fan. But I've been wearing Steelers colors ever since I was in Pop Warner football. So, I have quite a long history of being a Steeler fan. But you mentioned a few things that we're going to talk about tonight. And let's start with the draft. Since we're two Steeler fans, we can kind of talk all night until some of my other guys come. For our audience sake, Don Hayes, who is usually here tonight, he had a tragedy. One of his students was killed in a car crash.
Oh.
He will not be in tonight. Demetrius should be back very soon. Demetrius, as you know, his wife died of brain cancer back here about 6 weeks ago. So he's taking the time to heal, and he'll be back soon. But we thank those that have stuck around and been faithful in watching our broadcast. So let's talk a little bit about the draft, since you said you worked with the Steelers Depot and you had you published a lot of draft news, right?
Well, a little bit. Actually, I went up with a buddy up to the Steelers draft party in Pittsburgh for the Friday night, day 2 of the draft. So we were in Pittsburgh, and Cam Hayward was having a live podcast up on stage AE. So that was pretty nice, and so we were there as they were making the picks.
So, what did you think about the Steelers' pick when they moved up and drafted Broderick? What were your thoughts, or were you already, were you an insider and you kind of knew that was coming?
No, the thing is the wild card this year for the Steelers is Omar Khan. And, he's been with the organization for 20 years, but this was his first year as the general manager. And then he had brought in Andy Weidel from the Eagles as the assistant general manager. And this was their first time without Kevin Colbert at the helm. So it was hard to tell, were things going to stay the same, or was it going to be a little bit different? And Omar, I think, proved to be a little bit different. One of the big things for the Steelers was the a lot of gaps in the lineup. Offensive line, specifically tackle, cornerback. They lost Cam Sutton. They lost almost their entire inside linebacking crew. They needed a third outside linebacker. So that they had a lot of holes to fill. And with the 7 picks, didn't quite know. A lot of people were speculating at 17. Would they maybe draft back in the draft to get more picks? Or were they going to draft up? But the way the draft unfolded, there were so many trades there in those first, the first 15 selections. And it just seemed to fall in the Steelers' favor because cornerbacks weren't being picked up. And at first, offensive linemen were not being picked up. Quarterbacks were going in other positions. So when he made the move to move up, that was a surprise, but everybody was very happy with it.
Now, also, there was a lot of speculation that the Steelers were going to trade the number 32 pick, which was the first pick in the second round. Did you also hear those rumors?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, what happened is when they moved up, the question was, are they going to go on defense or are they going to get on offense? We knew that we needed an offensive lineman. So when Broderick Jones was available, wow. And the trade was with New England. So I guess Bill Belichick felt better about the Steelers getting Broderick Jones than the New York Jets. And so that was a nice – everybody was very pleased with that. Now, with going to day 2, the Steelers had the very first pick on day 2, which was because there was only 31 draft picks on day 1.
Right.
Miami had lost a pick. And so then the speculation was, hey, they're going to trade back for additional people. But one of the things is nobody expected Joey Porter to be available in the second round. And I think New England picked up Gonzalez.
Yeah, Christian Gonzalez. Yeah.
And then I think Washington picked up another cornerback, and Joey Porter was still there. So when the Steelers started on the clock, they used every bit of the clock. And then briefly that they showed the Steelers draft room on day 2, and you could see that people were working the phones. So what we speculated was that they were actively talking trades to get more draft picks because they lost a 4th round draft pick. And but because Joey Porter was available, I think Omar was holding firm. He wanted to get good value for that pick 32. And when nobody would pony up what the Steelers wanted, well, then they were rewarded with Joey Porter II.
So, even though Joey was ranked as within the top 5 quarterbacks, there was actually, what was it, 3 taken ahead of him, I think.
Well, there was Forbes was went ahead of him, and Gonzalez.
And Witherspoon too, right?
Well, yeah, Witherspoon. Yeah, he was like the 5th pick. So really, it turned out that Joey was number 4 because you had Washington picking up Emmanuel Forbes, and New England picked up Christian Gonzalez with pick 17, which was the Steelers' original
pick, right?
Pick, and that's where we thought that Porter would go. And then Deonte Banks, safety cornerback, but Porter was available. And the thing is that the cornerback class was considered to be very deep this year. And then with the offensive line, with the tackles, maybe not quite so deep. And the number of tackles went, I think Jones was the 4th tackle selected, I think. Tackle.
I think he was the 3rd, or let's see, because Skoronski went ahead of him, and Darnell Wright, I believe. Yeah. So going into day 2, we got Joey Porter. So what did you think of the second day of the draft?
Well, I tell you, the way it started was fantastic. Everybody was thinking, because the Steelers used up all the time on their clock, that they were going to trade back, but they got Joey Porter. Stage AE erupted. Everybody was very excited, with the selection. And then the Steelers had another 2nd round pick, and then I think it was pick 80 at the time, and I believe that was the pick. That's when they traded back, and then the question was, well, what hole are they going to fill? And the Steelers do have a lot of gaps, and they picked up Keanu
Benton,
defensive lineman, and defensive what was really important to fill up, and the Steelers' run defense it's gotten better the last couple seasons, but at key moments it's broken down. And because when Tyson Olulu got hurt before, the run defense just hasn't been the same up the middle. So they needed somebody that could plug up that middle. So Benton was a good selection, and people seemed happy with that. And then they were going to the 3rd round. And again, another surprise. And what was impressive is that Omar Khan he acted decisively to move up to get Broderick Jones, but then it seemed that he showed a lot of patience. And look, Joey Porter, they had a 1st round grade on him. They got him with pick 32, and then they got Keanu Benton, and then the 3rd round, Darnell Washington, who's just a beast. I think he's like one of the biggest tight ends of the whole draft class, and he was available, so Pittsburgh picked him up.
Okay, so now we're into round 4, and we've addressed our offensive line. We've addressed cornerback, defensive tackle. It's round 4. What did you think about their pickup in round number? Did they have a pick in round 4?
Yeah, they did. because
Yeah,
they they
that's when they got Herbig, right?
traded back, and they got Herbig.
Right.
I think there's Nate and Mick, so they had signed. I think Nate Herbig in the off season a few weeks ago. The bigger brother, or the older, not the bigger, but the older brother, and then they got Herbig out of Wisconsin, a linebacker out of Wisconsin. So this is kind of an interesting pick because, and I hope it works, because right now the Steelers need a third outside linebacker for T.J. Watt or Alex Highsmith, because you have Quincy Roche, and then that's about it. So you needed a number 3 outside linebacker, but you also need another middle inside linebacker, because they signed 2 inside linebackers in the offseason. Devin Bush is gone. Miles Jack is gone. Robert Spillane is gone. They just have Robinson, who 2 years ago or 3 years ago was a running back in college. And that's about their only inside linebacker. And Herbig can play, reportedly, he can play both inside and outside. The concern with him playing outside is he might be a little bit light. He's about 240. And there's a concern about him playing on the edge. Can he hold the edge? But that's where the Steelers have indicated that that's where they're going to start with him. So hopefully he can play both, but is he good enough to plug one of those holes?
Or is he a stopgap?
Don't know. He could either turn out to be another Vince Williams, who was a late round guy, not very athletic guy, that turned out to have a great career with the Steelers and was a good inside pass rusher. Or do you end up with somebody like a Tyler Matakevich, who had a lot of energy but was more of a special team specialist for the Steelers? He just couldn't he couldn't shed the blocks. And so you did not want to see Tyler Matakevich in the middle of the field. And so that's the unknown quotient. That's what we're going to be finding out this year with Herbig, is which direction. I'm hoping that he's another Vince Williams.
Okay, now I believe the Steelers didn't get a 5th or a 6th round pick. Am I correct?
Right. They had 2 7th round picks.
Right. Now those 2 7th round picks. Let's see. I'm trying to find them here on my draft list.
Yeah, you had a cornerback, Corey
Trice,
and then you had a guard out of Maryland, Spencer Anderson.
And what did you think about Corey Trice?
Well, see, this is a similar thing to Darnell Washington, who had some swelling in his right knee, and maybe the reason that tight end Darnell Washington went to the 3rd round is because there are some injury concerns. Now, the same thing with Corey Trice. He was evaluated to be a day 2 selection, either late 2nd round, 3rd round draft pick, and then he was there in the 7th round. But he had a broken ankle, I think, in high school, and then he had a high sprain, and I think another pretty bad injury 2 years ago in college. And so then he had to play with a brace this last year. So that may have affected his abilities, and that probably hurt his stock in the draft.
So our Mr. Irrelevant turned out to be Spencer Anders, that guard from Maryland. What did you think about his pick as our last pick in the draft?
Well, it's kind of interesting. But from my views, is we had other holes to fill. but in the interior with the interior line, uh, you got Kevin Dotson, but he might be on notice. You got a couple free agents that were signed, including Herbig, not the draft pick, but his brother, who was, and then uh, and then the two free agents from last year. So you have a lot of interior linemen. So I wasn't quite sure why they went with. They saw something in him, obviously, to pick him up. But he was one of the people that we knew the least about.
Um,
Now let me mention one thing about Trice, though. He could end up being the steal of the draft if it turns out that his body has healed, and then he can go back to being the player he was 3 seasons ago. He could be the steal of the draft.
Now we did have one of our cornerbacks. He asked to be traded, and the Steelers granted his wish. Eckler, what was
Arthur Male.
yeah. What do you think? Do you think he kind of saw the handwriting on the wall, even though he played 17 games last year, or was he a salary cap casualty?
No, I do not think he was a salary cap. The Steelers right now are about $7 million in the black with the salary cap, but that's under the rule of 51. Now, once the training camp starts and you count all 53 players, you have to sign your draft picks. You have to have a set aside, usually about $8 million for during the season for injuries, to sign players to replace people that go on IR. Well, then they're probably in the hole a bit, but they could make that up by redoing like TJ Watt's contract. If they redo his contract, that can free up quite a bit of money. I don't think, they reported that it was about $1.8 million in savings, but I don't think that they calculated the offset on the rule of 51. So it might be a little bit less, might be closer to $1 million that they're actually saving off of the salary cap. No, I think that the Steelers probably, I was surprised when I heard the news because I didn't understand why the Steelers would release him, especially when one of the gaps that the Steelers have is in the slot position, and he's not strong in coverage, but he was a good run defender, and he played a lot more of the slot than anybody else that's currently on the team. Him and Cam Sutton played 98% of the slot plays on defense last year, and mostly Cam Sutton, but Male played there quite a bit. So I believe, and again, I'm speculating, but I believe that he requested to be released. There was some report that there was some disagreement over his contract. Now, what does that mean? Did he think that maybe he was owed a bump in salary, or maybe an extension? I don't know, but I believe that he requested to be released, and the Steelers honored his request because he was signed for the 2023 season.
Yeah, he was signed, and it was by he it was something that he requested, and they granted it. And I'm wondering, do you think that puts extra pressure on Porter and Trice?
Well, it certainly gives them well, Porter, I think, has already had a very strong shot at making the 53. For Trice, that makes his path easier to get there. And, now it's a question is like with Joey Porter and Trice is, okay, well, what is their skill set? Can they play the slot? And both of them are pretty decent size, but how are they going to be used? And that's I'm looking forward to going to Latrobe to being at camp to see and to get an idea of how they'll be utilized.
I saw a lot of very high draft marks for the Steelers draft from a lot of the sports writers and whatnot. What grade did you give the Steelers draft?
And incomplete. I want to see him play. No, seriously, I have to say I would give them between a B plus and an A minus. I would. I think that the Steelers got everything that they were targeting, and they were able to fill a lot of the gaps that they had in their lineup. Now, what this draft will do, what we're going to find out, is how good is that scout team? Because they juggled around the scouting team a little bit. They moved some of the scouts to different areas. They brought in Andy Weidell's brother. So they've made a few changes there. And the Steelers' track record at selecting defensive backs has not been good. You had the Artie Burns. He was drafted pretty high, didn't pan out. There's probably 6 or 7 that they've either drafted or they've signed that have just not worked out. Now, one of the things that's changed is they hired Ike Taylor. You remember Ike Taylor from the early 2000s. So he's actually now on the Steelers scouting team. And so he was a defensive back, and now he's evaluating defensive backs, and maybe that'll have an impact just to see how the Steelers evaluation, because again, Joey Porter was not the first cornerback selected. And so, like, for example, with Gonzalez going to New England, well, it'll be interesting in the guy that went to Washington. It'll be interesting to see over the next couple years how they stack up against each other, and then that's going to tell me, well, hey, this is how the Steelers' evaluations worked out. But for right now, I'm very happy, but I'm very anxious to see these guys on the field.
Well, let's talk about our division. And let's start at the most important position, quarterback. The Ratbirds, you're going to hear me throw out a lot of little slurs here. The Ratbirds, the Bungles, the Clowns. I'm sure you'll know which teams I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But the Ratbirds re-signed Lamar.
Yeah.
And they also got OBJ, and as well as drafting Zay Flowers. Of course, you have Joe Burrow down in Bungles, quarterback. Been to the dance, been to the playoffs against Kansas City at least twice. And then you have Deshaun Watson. Now, I have a lot of question marks about Deshaun Watson, but on paper and for the sake of past resumes, I'm going to put him at least in number 3. So what are your thoughts on our quarterback this year, even though he did get some experience from last year and the Steelers finished 9-8? What are your thoughts on the quarterback position for the Steelers?
Well, I have much higher expectations this year. Last year, Kenny Pickett started out as the number 3 quarterback in camp, and he was mostly working with in the beginning of training camp. He was working on third team, and then you had Mason Rudolph and uh, now I'm having a brain drain. Trubisky getting the first, second, and frankly, at the beginning of camp, Mason Rudolph looked the best. But put that into context. He's worked in that system the last couple seasons. Trubisky was new, and Kenny Pickett was a rookie quarterback. Now, towards the end of camp, Pickett started to get more second and first team reps, but not many. So then he was brought in during the Jets game, I think, at halftime, and then Mike Tomlin wrote him for the rest of the season. So he kind of came in the middle of the season, and once the season starts, the backup quarterbacks are usually running the scout teams. So he's not getting a lot of reps. So now, this year he's going to have a full training camp. Matt Canada, a lot of people don't like him. But, here's an opportunity that he's going to have full training camp as the number one quarterback. And he's got some weapons. And, you got George Pickens back. You got Deontay Johnson. You got Pat Freiermuth. Now you have Darnell Washington. And they picked up Robinson. I think it's Robinson, the other wide receiver.
Yeah, from the Rams.
Right. So, and then with Darnell Washington, they may be running a lot more 12 personnel. So I have a lot of expectations, and so Kenny Pickett should have a full grasp of the offensive game plan, and I would expect him to maybe not have fully, he's not going to be like Peyton Manning was at his prime, just sitting there switching plays at the last second at the line of scrimmage. But I think that he'll be able to do quite a bit more. So I'm looking. I have high expectations for Kenny Pickett this year.
Okay, let's talk about that wide receiving core that you mentioned. Of course, I think there's no doubt that the Bungles have the number one wide receiving group. I would say, with the addition of OBJ and Flowers, I will put the Ratbirds number two. I would generously, when it comes to consistency, place us at number three in our division as far as the talent is concerned. I'm a little concerned about the new addition, Allen from the Rams. I don't know if he still has that burst, and I'm not really sure, like how he's going to fit in with Kenny Pickett. But what's your assessment of our wide receiving core?
Well, I just want to mention something with Baltimore. With getting OBJ, even though he's not the OBJ of a few years ago, but with Zay Flowers, that's going to make Baltimore very dangerous. Because
and don't forget the other wide receiver that they have. Is it Blackman?
I'm not sure that they drafted. They drafted.
No. He was the number one last year, but he got hurt. He stayed hurt most of the season.
Oh, I can't think of who that is, but
yeah.
But they're going to be much more dangerous. One of the things that Lamar Jackson hasn't had is he hasn't had a downfield threat, and so now, if he threatens to run outside, but then you have Flowers or you have OBJ drifting down the field, what do? Do you come up to take on Lamar Jackson? Somebody has to stay back with those receivers. So I think it makes the Ravens much more dangerous. Now with the Steelers receiving core, A lot of folks are kind of down on Deontay Johnson. They talk about his drops and all that, but actually, if you look at his statistics, his drop rate is not that bad
compared to Claypool.
Well, I mean, compared to anybody in the league, it's really not that bad. He had the 1 year where he had a bad year, but he really improved on his catches. Now he's had some critical drops, and that's hurt. But I think it's going to help having all the different targets: Freiermuth, Robinson, Pickens, because somebody's going to be on single coverage, and that's where my high expectations with Pickens comes in, or excuse me, with Kenny Pickett comes in. He's got to find the open receiver, not be forcing the ball to somebody that's in double coverage. He shouldn't have to do that, and so I'm hoping that he spreads the ball around, and because he has a lot of legitimate targets that are real dangerous.
With the addition of our new tight end draft pick, are you looking for a lot of two tight end sets this year?
Well, it really seems like that. I mean, the Steelers are not being secretive. It really sounds like they want to emphasize the running game. And hey, Art Rooney II, he was talking about that 3 years ago when the Steelers were at the bottom of the league in the run game, and it has been atrocious. And just a couple seasons ago, they couldn't convert a 3rd and 1. And so I think that they're pulling out all stops to have a good running game. And hopefully what that will do is open up the play action, and make the Steelers a little bit more dangerous, because what was happening before, when they went to this quick release game, well, then what the team started doing, they just started stacking the box. As if you're going to pass it, you're going to be passing it, doing a little wide receiver screen or passing it a few yards down the field. Well, we're just going to pack the box. And I think now the Steelers should be in a position of where they can stretch the field a little bit.
Running game. When you look at the rosters, of course, the Browns are probably the most dangerous. Then we have a good running game from the Ravens when you include the threat for Lamar to run. And you have Joe Mixon with the Bungles. So where do you rank our running game?
Well, the way I look at it, and even with the wide receivers, I don't rank them against the other wide receiving corps from the other teams. Is how are they going to do against the other defenses? And how is our defense going to handle the other run defenses or the running games and the other wide receiving corps? And so, like for example, the Bengals lost a couple safeties. Okay, well, does that make them vulnerable now against our receiving corps whenever we play them again? Now with Baltimore, I think we're going to need Najee Harris producing some tough yardage, and I think that one of the things I noticed last year, one of the things on Najee was that he was trying to hesitate too much, look for the opening. And he was getting hit either behind the line of scrimmage or at the line of scrimmage. And then the yardage he was gaining was because he was breaking tackles. But then when you watch Jaylen Warren play, or not Jaylen Warren, the undrafted free agent from last year.
Let me see. I have to look at the roster for that one. The depth.
Yeah, Jaylen Warren. Yeah, and I had it right the first time. Yeah. Now what he did is he just runs. He gets the ball and he's just hitting the hole. Bang.
He runs north and south.
And then as the season wore on, Najee Harris started to do the same thing. And he started to break some runs at that point. He was starting to increase his yards per carry by doing that. So I think that if he's decisive, and if the what's going to be very important, because I think that the offensive line is going to be different than it was last year, and as long as they gel, the 1-2 punch of Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren might not be the best running back running game in the AFC North, but it should give the other defenses a run for their money.
Let's talk about that the defense a little bit because you've mentioned them many times, and uh, that is part of the key. So, what do you think about our defense and the additions that we've made in free agency as well as the draft?
Well, again, Omar Khan, I think, has done a great job. They're rebuilding the linebacking group, the inside linebacking group. I mean, everybody is gone from last year. So then you have Cole Holcomb that they brought in, and Elandon Roberts, and then you have Mark Robinson. But Mark Robinson, I think it is he's like a downhill hitter, and but he needs a little bit of further development. It's going to be interesting to see him in camp and to see how he produces. Herbig is a big part of that. Fourth round pick. But, right now it looks like he may have a very important role in the Steelers defense. I'm a bit concerned. When we look at the defense, the defensive line is getting older. Cam Hayward's in his 30s. Tyson Alualu is probably not back. He's probably going to retire. Chris Wormley, he's still rehabbing. He probably won't be back, and if he is, it's going to be at the beginning of the season. He won't be in training camp. So I think for Keanu Benton, he may have an opportunity. I don't know if Martravius Adams may be on the 53, but his role will probably be reduced. And then one of the question marks is Liao. And is he going to be a down lineman, or is he going to be put on the edge, or are they going to use him as kind of like a tweener? And then when you shift back to the linebacker core, I talked about the inside linebackers. Outside, you got two great guys in Highsmith and TJ Watt, but who's behind them? And you have Herbig there, but he's an unknown quantity. You have Quincy Roche, who was more of a number 4 outside linebacker and special teams contributor. I'm not sure if we have a third outside linebacker there that'll be able to spell Highsmith or Watt whenever they come off the field, because they don't play 100% of the defensive snaps. In the defensive backfield, again, a lot of question marks. You lost Terrell Edmonds, and I think that's a bigger loss than some people realize. I think he complemented Minkah Fitzpatrick very well. But now you got DeMonte Casey, and we'll see how he fits in. The Steelers did sign a cornerback in the middle of the draft, Chris Sullivan, I think his name is. And maybe he's somebody that could step into the slot. And then you lost Cam Sutton, which, again, they signed Peterson, but he's over 30, more of an outside cornerback. Is he somebody that can be put onto the inside? I don't know. But they have they're going to have to rejigger
Yeah.
that defense. I mean, fully a third of the players that were on the roster at the end of the season are gone. Like 17 players that were on the roster in week 18 are not on the roster right now. So
I was a little concerned, as you just mentioned, about the signing of Patrick Peterson. Even though I know, it was somewhat of a friendly contract, I was still a little concerned about not only his age, but the speed of the wide receivers, not just in our division, but in when you look at our schedule. So, what were your thoughts on Patrick Peterson? Did you think that this was a good acquisition, or did you think that it was kind of a bargain basement bargain here?
no, I think it's, and again, what we're relying on is the evaluation of the scouting staff. So, you have the college scouts, and then you have the professional scouts, the guys that scout the league, and so I'm hoping that he has some gas left in the tank, and he could be a very good veteran presence for some of the younger defensive backs, and they might rally around him, kind of like Joe Hayden. When Joe Hayden, his last couple seasons, he wasn't the same Joe Hayden, but he was important in terms of the glue that he was to hold that secondary together, and the clubhouse rule, and that's what I'm hoping that Peterson can do. That he has enough left in the tank where he can cover some people.
Well, we'll see. Like I said, I was a little surprised, but we'll see how that works out. What's your most anticipated quarterback matchup of the upcoming season?
Quarterback matchup?
Yeah.
Well, I would like to see Pittsburgh. I would like to see Kenny Pickett and Joe Burrow, Pittsburgh and Cincinnati going at it. I think right now Cincinnati is the best team in the league, or excuse me, not in the league, but in the division. Those are the guys to beat, and I'd like Kenny Pickett to beat them. And Joe Burrow is considered one of the better quarterbacks in the entire NFL. I think a lot of people. There were some ratings where they had Kenny Pickett as like the 28th best quarterback in the league, and they even had the 3 draft picks ahead of him.
Yeah, I saw that article.
And I'm not big on these rankings. It's kind of like the old college rankings. I mean, it's like, okay, well, so somebody's just like voting. But that should put a little chip on her shoulder. And it's like Bill Cowher was talking. He was on the Ben Roethlisberger podcast the other day. And that's one of the things that they were talking about, getting a chip on your shoulder and saying, hey, this is what you think about us. Well, we'll show you. We're from Pittsburgh. And that's what I would like to see.
Yeah, I would like to see that also. And being a Steeler fan, that would be great. I would love to see them win the division, and cause a lot of a shakeup within our division. You mentioned Canada. Is Canada on the hot seat this year?
Oh yeah. I think that this is his contract year. And if the Steelers' offense falls flat, he's done. Now, on the other hand, if they take off, well, hey, he good for him. And I think that the players, when you hear them individually talking, they've supported Canada. You don't hear them throwing him under the bus or anything like this. And now the fan base, that's a different story. But I want him to succeed because if Matt Canada is succeeding, that means the Steelers are succeeding. And but he's definitely on the hot seat without a doubt. The offense has got to produce. You can't be scoring 17 points a game to expect to win the division.
Uh, over the course of especially the last 2 years, a lot of fans have called for Tomlin's head. What do you think about that? My question whenever I hear that is, if not Tomlin, who? But
Right.
what's your thoughts?
Well, I guess my thoughts are as good as all the fans that are calling for his head. It doesn't matter. Art Rooney II is who matters. And Art Rooney II, he's going to stick with Mike Tomlin. I think that this is Mike Tomlin's job as long as Mike Tomlin wants to wants to continue being a Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. And I think he's done a good job. I mean, one of the best jobs he had was an 8-8 season whenever Ben Roethlisberger got hurt. And you have Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph, and they end up 8-8. And there's a couple games that they could have won. And so I think he's a very good coach. He has his flaws, and I think Mike Tomlin would say that he's flawed. I don't think that there's any coach that's perfect. But I can understand the impatience. But you look at teams like the Browns that they were going through coaches left and right, and nothing happened to improve the team. And I think that Tomlin is, as long as he has here the players, and I think he always has. Maybe not every player, but I think the bulk of the players. I could see him being a Hall of Fame coach at some point. If he wins another Super Bowl, well, then I think he's just guaranteed himself a gold jacket.
Yeah, if he wins another Super Bowl, he will definitely get a gold jacket. But I think Tomlin will get a gold jacket regardless, considering the record that he's had. Actually, I think you point to the 8-8 season. I actually think the last season was his best season. I had picked the Steelers to go 7-10 last year, and the fact that he brought him back and still had a winning season, 9-8, to me that was his most successful year. When you consider the injuries, you consider the schedule, the whole 9 yards. So I actually think last year was his best success. But what kind of record are you looking for this year from the Steelers? Will they do better than 9-8? Less than
Well,
8-9? What do you think?
My standard is the playoffs. Got to make the playoffs, and you can't have a successful season without making the playoffs. Now, last year I kind of gave them a pass, and simply because not at the beginning of the season, but once Kenny Pickett came in, rookie quarterback, my expectations went down along with T.J. Watt's injury. But this year, I'm looking for the playoffs, and if 9-8 will get them in the playoffs, I'll take it, because now you have a shot. Now, would I prefer 12-5? That would be pretty nice. But
that would be outstanding. 12-5.
Yeah, but the thing that we have to face is that the
Tomlin would get Coach of the Year if they went 12-5. I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Well, the problem is Cincinnati is strong, you know,
And the Redbirds, yeah.
Radbirds are strong. I think that they're much more dangerous with the wide receivers that they got. So, you know, in the division, if you can go 4-2, that's pretty darn good, I think. And Cleveland is going to be, they're going to ride or die with Sean Watson. And but if Sean Watson is on, Cleveland could be right up there. So you just can't count the AFC North out. So I would not predict a 12-5 season. I just want them to do good enough to get into the playoffs.
Let's talk about the other elephant in the room in the AFC with the addition of one Mr. Aaron Rodgers. What's your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers, now a quarterback in the AFC, as if we didn't already have enough good quarterbacks in the AFC?
Well, it's kind of like with Ben. You know, the last couple seasons, Ben wasn't the quarterback that he was a few seasons ago, but he could have flashes of brilliance, and you know, he could help you win some games. And that's the way I look at Aaron Rodgers. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is as good as he was a couple seasons ago, but he might help the Jets win some games.
Do you still consider Patrick Mahomes the cream of the crop as far as quarterbacks in the AFC?
Yeah, I mean, you know, look at him last year in his last game. I mean, you know, he injured his ankle, and you know, when I saw the replay, I said, "Oh man!" And then he just kept on cranking. So yeah, until somebody dethrones him, I think he's it in the AFC.
So we've talked about the draft. We've talked about the wide receiving core, the defense. Who are you expecting? Are you expecting? And I'm going back. I'm going to go back to the AFC North here. Excuse me, the East. Do you think that Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback in that division, or do you think that Josh Allen is still the best quarterback in that division? And are you expecting Buffalo to still win that division?
I would rather have Josh Allen than Aaron Rodgers. Now, a few years ago, my answer would be different, but this season, I think you got to go with Josh Allen.
Okay, well, hey, David, it was good talking a little Steelers with you, man. I think we can pull off a show. We can get some of the guys from Clubhouse and some of my guys get healthy. There's injuries on both sides of the ball here. But I think for a show to kind of get our feet wet, I think this was a pretty good summation of our team. You got any final thoughts or things that you would like to say to our audience?
No, I just you know, I think for anybody, for whatever team that people are rooting for, there weren't many teams that were unhappy with their draft results. I think most teams are looking up. So it should be a really competitive year. I think most fans should be pretty happy with what their teams did in the draft. I'm particularly happy with how the Steelers did, but hey, come September, then we're all going to find out how it worked out.
Yeah, well, hey, it was good talking to you, Dave. I appreciate your time. We're going to have to set a time for our regular Steelers show. And it was a pleasure meeting you, a pleasure talking with you. And I hope I'm looking for a good season from our team. And as you know, Are what is it? All of us Yinzers say. I'm sure you went back and had a few brews for the draft. So yeah, I'm looking forward to a good season. I'm hoping for improvement, and I look forward to talking to you again soon, Dave. We can as soon as we establish our regular Steeler program. Uh, hope to talk to you every week.
Beautiful. Okay, black and gold. Take care, James.
All right, you have a good night, Dave. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Right. Oh man, that was David O. Good to have him on the show. Great having a fellow Steeler fan on the show. So I don't have to feel like the odd man out this season. And I look forward to our black and gold event. So have a great night, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you soon.